As you saw from the ABCD learning structure that we use, everything that happens in the classroom is really about how is the learning going to be applied on the job. And this should give you a clue that most learning does not happen in the classroom. It actually happens in the real world. And so let's take a look at that in terms of how does learning really happen. And there's a model we use called 70-20-10. And 70-20-10 is a model that suggests kind of the proportional breakdown of how people learn effectively. It's not hard and fast science, but it's a way to think about when and where learning happens. And it's based on a 1996 survey asking 200 executives to self-report how they believed they learned. And basically, development generally begins with a realization that you've got a gap, some failure that you need to do something about. And then you will actually go in and start developing. And most of that development actually is happening through on-the-job experience, whether it's stretch assignments, new projects, job rotations, but things where you actually learn by doing, and importantly, learn by doing and then what went well and what could I do even better next time. Another important part of that learning is learning through others, and this is especially feedback, but also working around and observing people who are skilled in the area you're trying to develop. So shadowing, observing, coaching, being mentored, group discussions even, these are ways that we learn through others. And only a small percentage of your learning occurs through formal learning, like going to a class or taking e-learning or reading a book or a video. Because formal learning is very conceptual and theoretical. What's important is you transfer that learning on the job. Now, I want you to think about, as an associate trainer, when you're facilitating someone, you're only really taking care of that 10%, that formal learning. What can you do to help the 20% and 70% also take place? And the hint is that some of that is actually happening in how you deliver in the classroom. Are you involving other people in the discussion? Are you giving feedback and having people share ideas and experiences? That's the 20%. And then how are you doing the activities? That's the 70%. Are you giving people a chance to really practice and learn by doing? Now, another important question here is, how do we measure success? All of this learning, all of this effort and investment and time and energy, is it making a difference? And we use something called the Kirkpatrick model. And this actually dates back to the late 1950s, but it's a really simple way to measure effectiveness. The first level, Kirkpatrick level 1, is simply reaction. This is, how did the participants respond to the training? In a DKSH, we do this with after-class surveys, which are basically, did I like it, did I not like it? Was good, was the teacher good? Level 2 is about measuring learning, and we use primarily quizzes and exams to check whether or not people recall the information they've learned, and do they recall it correctly. It's important to use quizzes and exams to make sure that the learning has happened. But we need to get to level 3, Kirkpatrick level 3, which is about behavior change. And this is actually measuring, have the behaviors on the job changed? Are they applying their learning on the job and doing things differently? And so at DKSH, we use our learning management system, Maya, to send out these Kirkpatrick level 3 surveys, usually about 3 months after the class, to see whether or not behavior has changed. Now, the gold star measurement, the one that's very difficult for us to get, is level 4, results. And this is actually looking at the impact of the learning on the job. This is looking at how does performance of people who've gone through the training compare to people who have not gone through the training. This is kind of the gold standard. We're still working on measuring this effectively. But if we can get up to level 3, that should be pretty good. Now, again, I want you to think about, when you're facilitating as an associate trainer, what are you doing to make sure that when people get back on the job, their behavior has changed so that we can measure a change and an impact?